Yes, exactly. Because as dietitians, we're scientists. We love knowing the intricacies, the vitamins, the minerals, what's actually going on inside the body, the physiology, all of that. But people, our clients, don't really want to hear all of that. They just want to know what should I eat and, when and how should I eat it. So really being able to talk more food and less nutrients, even though they're important, they're still going to be included if you eat the food. And if it doesn't taste good, they're not going to eat it.
Hey everyone, welcome to Food Culture Curious. I am your host, Arely Gutierrez. As a first-gen Mexican American, and especially now working in healthcare as a dietitian, I have seen firsthand how a lack of cultural inclusion can really negatively impact our patients. And I want to help change that. So I started Food Culture Curious to have impactful conversations with healthcare professionals of different cultures and backgrounds to get their insight on how to be more culturally inclusive in our nutrition recommendations. It can make all the difference in the world to our patients. Let's continue this journey together with today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome to Food Culture Curious. My name is Arely. I'm a registered dietitian on a mission to help healthcare professionals be more culturally inclusive with their nutrition recommendations. Today with us, we have Diana Guevara. She is a community health education specialist for the Nourish program at the Michael and Susan Dell Center for Healthy Living at UT Health Houston School of Public Health. As a culinary-focused public health dietitian, Diana's passion lies in teaching others how to make healthy food taste good. She has worked extensively with adults living with type 2 diabetes and has experience in individual counseling, nutrition education, cooking demonstrations, cooking classes, and recorded and live media in English and Spanish. Welcome, Diana.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. And thank you again so much for doing the Food Culture Curious meetup. So for those of you that aren't familiar, for the dietitians and healthcare professionals living in Houston, usually every other month, we're starting to meet up at different restaurants of different culinary backgrounds. And this month we did a Colombian restaurant with Diana, and she walked us through some of the different dishes and pastries. So that was really awesome of you.
Yeah, no, it was so fun. I hadn't been since I was a child, so it was really fun to relive those moments, and that restaurant was so good. So I'm happy to do it.
Awesome. Well, we'd love to hear more about your food culture. For those of the healthcare professionals that weren't with us that day, would also love to learn about it. So tell me a little bit about your foods growing up, specifically what were the major proteins, starches, and produce?
Yeah, so I was born in Colombia and then I moved here to the US very young. So my food culture is really just what my parents were able to bring here and kind of cultivate in our household. I would say my kind of growing up food, my favorite food was lentils. I just love lentils. And the way that my mom would make it is, lentils with the rice and the ground beef, tomato, onion. So that's kind of like my staple child meal. In terms of our kind of Colombian food culture, rice is really the staple at every meal. We have it, maybe not at breakfast, but sometimes at breakfast. We have it at lunch, we have it at dinner. So there's always rice in the meal. There's also lots of other starches. So there's lots of potatoes, there's yuca, which is yuca root, kind of that root vegetable. We have plantains, either sweet or unripe. So lots of different starches there. In terms of the protein, really anything can be cultivated in Colombia. It's one of the most diverse, biodiverse countries in the world. So we've got lots of chicken, we've got lots of beef, we've got lots of pork. If you're around the coast, we've got lots of fish as well, any sort of seafood. So lots of options in terms of protein. And then, of course, our plant-based proteins, we've got lots of lentils, lots of beans. Those are huge in our culture. And then going over to produce, really a lot of fruit. So fruit is a huge staple in Colombia. Every day at breakfast, you'll have a bowl of fruit. Every day at each meal, you might have a fruit juice. So fruit is huge in terms of our vegetables, a lot of onion and tomato. That's basically in every food you'll make. It's kind of like that starting point for a meal. So onions, tomatoes. My dad used to use a lot of garlic. Those are kind of our biggest in terms of produce as well.
Awesome. Well, you did mention, garlic, which you guys season with. What are some other main seasonings?
Yeah, so when we think about kind of like my family in particular, there's a lot of, it's really just garlic. My dad loves garlic salt. Your salt and pepper is going to be pretty standard. There's like triguisar, these little like, I honestly don't know what it is, but my dad always used to use it to give it color, give the food color. So it's kind of like a yellow seasoning. It's probably got a little bit of turmeric or something in there. It just doesn't have a whole lot of taste. It's more for color, as my dad would say. So that's a huge one that's been used. Those little like bouillon type cubes, those
Mhm.
are often used a lot, kind of again to start the dishes. But really, a lot of the flavor starts out with that onion tomato mixture, and you cook it down. So you kind of let it reduce a little bit, and it becomes kind of like the guiso for a lot of your dishes.
Gotcha. I think one flavor, and again, I don't have a lot of experience with Colombian food, but one flavor that really surprised me when we went to that restaurant was the coconut. There was coconut in the limeade, there was coconut in the cazuela de mariscos, and I think I saw some other dishes. So is that a common flavor?
Yes, yes, actually it is. So, I mean, when you think about Colombia, it's the fourth largest country in South America. So it's quite large and it's very biodiverse. Like I said, we've got all sorts of ecosystems, if you will. So we've got mountains, we've got the coasts, we've got rainforests, we've even got some deserts. So you can find pretty much anything. More if you're in the coastal areas is where you'll see a lot more of that coconut. So coconut lemonade, very popular. You can do like, coconut in your seafood. So typically you'll see it kind of more in those tropical flavors and the seafood and whatnot because it's more of a coastal flavor. But yeah, it's very present.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit more about some popular dishes that you see. I know there's regional differences, but what are some major ones?
Yeah, so our biggest kind of more well-known dish that everyone needs to try is the bandeja paisa. Someone ordered it at the restaurant, but it's basically just this big hearty platter. So bandeja means platter, and paisa is just one of the regions in Colombia. So it's got everything you really need. It's got beans, it's got rice, it's got beef. It's either, shredded beef or you can see it also with like a flank steak. You've got sausage, you've got chicharrón, which is pork rind. It's like a big strip. They cut little kind of individual chunks of it and then they fry it. We've also got plantains. Usually you'll get a sweet plantain, but sometimes they'll let you switch it out for a unripe fried plantain, avocado, and then the fried egg on top. That's my favorite little piece of it. So it's a
Mhm.
big hearty dish, but delicious and really kind of satisfying when you are super hungry. Another interesting dish in Colombia is lechona. A lot of times you'll see it for maybe celebrations, more in the south of Colombia, more celebrations or maybe holidays. And lechona is where you have the pig kind of gutted and then stuffed with rice, of course, the pork meat, maybe some peas, kind of like a mixture. And then I believe it's fried or it's either kind of roasted on over flame. So very reminiscent of kind of Hawaii, thinking Hawaii, but
Mhm.
for our flavors. So more of a rice, peas, and then that pork. So lechona is very popular, specifically more in El Huila, where my mother is from. Tamales, Colombian tamales, very different from a Mexican tamal, which looks like a little purse. We use plantain leaves to kind of cover it and make a little purse out of it. And inside, it's a mixture of egg and rice, maybe some potato, and I believe there's usually like a chicken, maybe some beef, and then a hard-boiled egg, maybe some peas as well. So peas also appear all over the Colombian food culture. So those are kind of the big hitters that you'll see. And then, of course, my favorites. I'm from Bogota, the capital city. A dish from there is the ajiaco bogotano. It's my favorite soup. We're big on soups. You can see soups all over the place, but this soup in particular has three different types of potatoes, and it's more of a stew. It's kind of reduced down, gotten a little bit thicker. You have shredded chicken in there, and then you top it with some heavy cream and some capers and just that mixture of everything. And then the secret to get that flavor in ajiaco is a herb called guascas. Um, Difficult to find here in the US, but it's an herb that grows there, and that's what gives it kind of that unique flavor.
Yeah, I saw that you got that dish when we went to the Colombian restaurant. So that looked really good. You did mention that some of these dishes you see more during holidays. Can you expand a little bit about some holidays and some foods that you see during certain holidays, especially the hot chocolate that you guys make?
Oh yeah, yes. So our hot chocolate is really more of an everyday thing, to be honest. But it is also a big thing to try. So typically we have it at breakfast. So you basically have unsweetened darker chocolate, cook it down with some milk, and then what really makes it kind of a nice little thing is you can either add in some cheese, like a fresh cheese, more of a melty almost mozzarella type, but more of a fresh cheese that you'll find there in Colombia. If you're in El Huila, again, kind of that southern part where my family's from, you'll also see what they call pan, which are little pieces of kind of a crouton, if you will. It's a toasty type of bread, usually made with a flour and maybe some cheese. And they're cooked very low and slow for a very long time, so they get nice and crispy and crunchy. So you'll just break one into the hot chocolate and it gets nice and soft and rehydrates, and then you eat that with your cheese. And that's more of a breakfast thing. But in terms of holidays, Colombia is primarily a Catholic country, so a lot of holidays. Pretty much most weekends are 3-day weekends because there's just so many holidays. Kind of the bigger ones in December, you basically barely work because a lot of holidays in December. So some of the fun ones are Candle Day, Dia de Velitas. It's December 7th, and you just go out at night and you light some candles, maybe with some wishes, to celebrate. I think it's for Mary. I might be wrong, but you celebrate a certain deity. Then we go into what's called a novena, which is the 9 days before Christmas. And generally, it can be just within your family, or since families are so big, it becomes more of a gathering every night, the 9 days before Christmas. And we retell the story of Christmas, the looking for a home to sleep in, and then, the birth of Jesus and all of that. So you kind of take the 9 days and are telling these little stories and doing the prayers along with it. And of course, there's always food. So big holiday foods there are buñuelos. Those are my favorite. It's a little ball made with cheese, yuca flour, maybe some cornstarch, and then it's fried. So it's a nice little ball, very delicious, different from
Mexican
Mexico.
buñuelos. Yeah.
There's also a dessert. I believe it's called Nochebuena, and it's a mixture. You've got figs that have been preserved like in a syrup. You've got natilla, which is basically like a flan, and you have the buñuelos, and then buñuelos, but preserved in that same syrup. So it's all kind of a mixture that you have on this little plate. So that's a very traditional kind of holiday snack. Pan de yuca, almojában has a lot of kind of yuca based little breads that you have around that time. So really kind of getting together and enjoying little snacks at your gathering, and then of course always dancing. For the actual holiday, our family doesn't really stick to a specific food. We always kind of vary it, but One thing that some people do, they will have ajiaco at Christmas. That's more of like they'll have it as the holiday meal. You might also, if you're doing a large gathering, you might also order a lechona, so that also depending on the regions, that's kind of what people will do. So those are some kind of holiday items.
Awesome. So many of those sound so good, and we'll just have to go back to Pueblito to try more things. Thank you for sharing about your food culture. If it's okay, I'd like to switch over to talking a little bit more about the nutrition and health side of things. So both of us being dietitians, I know we work really hard to be culturally inclusive. So I do want to hear what you think are some challenges that the Colombian American population faces here in the US.
Yeah, so our biggest kind of nutrition opportunities, I'll say, is a lot of our food, is based around the starch. So our whole plate starts with some rice, it starts with some potatoes, with some yuca. It's not just one, it's kind of all of them. So the starches, a lot of our foods might be fried. So those are some things that we can think about when we're counseling a Colombian or Colombian American. But there are also some great things to highlight. So again, just going back to a lot of the tomatoes, the onions, the beans mixed with the rice, the lentils mixed with the rice. So really highlighting the good parts of our culture while also understanding that there are some opportunities there with the starches and a lot of the fried food that we might have. And with the air fryer and the oven, we can make things work. So it's not a dead end, but it's definitely something just to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. How do we work with this existing pattern, right? So
Mm.
air frying would be one way we could kind of keep some of those fried items in there in a little bit healthier way.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And just balancing the plate a little more, kind of getting away from the understanding that we have to have rice at every meal or we have to have rice and potatoes and, yuca and plantains. So kind of working with the balancing a little bit.
How do you usually work with your patients as far as that aspect? I know right now you don't do a lot of individual counseling, but back when you were working with your patients, how would you help them either portion or reduce the amount of starch in a meal when it has that many starchy items?
Yeah. So my biggest thing has always been I don't like to restrict. I don't like to be the
Hmm.
I don't think any of us like to to do that or prefer to do that. So I like to take the other approach of just let's highlight and let's add. What can we add to the plate? And if we're adding, ideally vegetables, but if we're adding something to that plate, naturally the other items kind of start to diminish a little bit. So it's really just highlighting how can we add some more vegetables? And my kind of whole career has been based off let's not make it just a gross, sad salad. Let's make it something delicious and wonderful that you're actually going to enjoy. So how can we make our vegetables taste good to you and kind of fit within your meal and your food culture as well?
I love that. Tell me about your work in the culinary space. You talk about how you want to make healthy food taste delicious. What are your approaches? What do you do to work on that?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that we've seen is we know that eating vegetables, eating more vegetables can help decrease your risk for chronic disease by a lot. Just one serving. This is kind of the fact that got me into nutrition and especially public health and preventative side of things is just that one serving of fruits and vegetables can decrease your risk for chronic disease by 20%. That's pretty significant, and I feel like a lot of people might not know that it can be as easy as just adding one serving. So when I work with my classes. So right now I'll do culinary medicine classes. I've done a lot of more virtual classes because we have a university where we can stream out live classes. So people will cook along with me from their own homes. They're able to look around and use their own cooking equipment and cooking space to cook along with me. So it's really just highlighting how can we make vegetables taste good for everyone. We're all very, very different. We all have different tastes. So usually what we'll do is we'll just go in and start with different cooking techniques, really kind of making it very inclusive by saying, this is a technique that we're using right now, maybe with sweet potatoes, but you can use it with your favorite root vegetables. So really kind of opening that space up for people to get creative and use their own flavors. So I'll always start with roasting. I love roasting vegetables. I feel like in my opinion, it's the tastiest way to eat a vegetable. But we'll also show sauteing. It's quick and easy and also can be delicious. We'll also show even a microwave vegetable is quick and easy. So different ways to not only cook the vegetable, but also to season it and make it be flavorful and taste good without maybe going just your bland salt and pepper. Although salt and pepper is also quite good.
And that's the hard part, is that we do have to work a little bit on our culinary skills to make healthy food taste delicious. And I think that's one place where I'm trying to grow, because I was always the dietitian that I just wanted to focus on the clinical and labs and not actually get in the kitchen. But they want to see, okay, tell me an example, tell me how to do this. And you can't tell them how to do it without knowing how to do it yourself in the kitchen. So that culinary part is really important.
Yes, yes, exactly. Because although we love, as dietitians, we're scientists. We love knowing the intricacies, the vitamins, the minerals, the what's actually going on inside the body, the physiology, all of that. But people, our clients, don't really want to hear all of that. They just want to know, what should I eat, and when and how should I eat it. So really being able to talk more food and less nutrients, even though they're important, they're still going to be included if you eat the food. And if it doesn't taste good, they're not going to eat it. So that's kind of the bottom line. So yeah, I love this line of work. I think it's very important. And there's space for everyone. So if you love more of the science part, that's totally fine. There's space for everyone. But really, if we're working with patients and counseling and kind of working with how do we make these food changes, these behavioral health changes, that's where we're really looking at, okay, we need to be able to communicate food.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing about everything that you do. Did you have any parting thoughts for us?
No, just thank you for having me. This is so fun. I will say, since I was born in Colombia, I grew up in Texas, so everything might not be the most accurate. I tried to do my research, but don't come for me if I say you're wrong.
No worries. I always tell my guests, we don't expect you to be, the food historian. You're here to talk about your experience, right? Just you, Diana, how you grew up eating. So it's okay.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you again so much for being here.
Of course, it was so fun.
If you are interested in supporting this podcast, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/food culture curious. Or as always, you can support by sharing, following, or rating this podcast. Every click from y'all means the world to me. And now for a quick disclaimer. Food Culture Curious is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not take the place of medical advice from licensed healthcare professionals. If you need to seek medical advice, please speak to your healthcare provider. Thank you for listening.